Welcome to the Rise Above Project. I'm your host, Joe Perroni. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, champion bodybuilder, and I've been a personal trainer for about 30 years. This podcast is about helping people with their emotional, spiritual, and physical fitness. I value strength, toughness, and truth. I despise complacency, the victim mentality, and following the herd. If you find my work to be valuable, please subscribe to my channel and tell a friend.
The title for today's show is Emotional Insecurity is the Key to Success. First, let me give you the spoiler alert at the very beginning, as if the title didn't inform you of my opinion already. Don't run from your emotional insecurities. Run with your emotional insecurities and use them to guide and fuel your success. Insecurities are just clues and hints that we need to improve some aspect of our emotional and/or physical strength. Let's be specific about what emotional insecurity is. Emotional insecurity is the feeling of anxiety or nervousness that may be triggered by perceiving oneself to be vulnerable or inferior in some way, and/or a sense of vulnerability or instability which threatens one's self-image or ego. An insecure person may lack confidence in their individual abilities, which definitely doesn't feel good, but it's not necessarily detrimental. More damaging is a lack of self-confidence in their value as a person or seeing themselves as broken. This dysfunctional emotional interpretation of themselves hinders their ability to acknowledge deficiencies and lack of skills with a positive mindset. It also hinders one from realizing that other people's or society's expectations does not make you a lesser person, unless, of course, you give into it. Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the view that they take of them." The difficulty in being a person with insecurities is in not realizing that you have weaknesses. We all have weaknesses. The difficulties begin if we choose a negative view of these deficiencies. One difficulty manifests by not acknowledging weaknesses, by trying to hide from them, or by lying about them to others. Those who choose to cope with their insecurities in this way are in denial, are revealing a lack of emotional strength, and miss out on many learning opportunities. Insecurities and weaknesses should be viewed with curiosity and concern rather than harsh judgment, and they should never be projected onto others, as they so often are, to avoid accountability. Another difficulty is that if a person lacks confidence in their value as a person, then they won't have the ability and the desire to objectively assess themselves and make the necessary corrections or sacrifices. Thus, two people can have the same performance level and yet have two completely different levels of insecurity and willingness or unwillingness to make corrections. And as Epictetus reminds us again, the view one takes concerning their insecurities is under their control. One person can let their insecurities rule their decision-making skills in a negative fashion by choosing inaction, choosing destructive action, being overly influenced by others' opinions, and/or being overly critical of who they are. While another person can look at their insecurities as a roadmap to aspects of themselves that could be improved, and they might actually look forward to the opportunity to make the changes. Directly accepting insecurities and taking steps to improve them increases self-esteem and performance level. However, not all insecurities come from personal weakness. Some insecurities arise from experiencing the realities of life, which includes other people's weaknesses. In this situation, there is nothing to change but how you interpret the situation. I can give you a few examples of that. When I was much younger, I dated two girls for a very short time. One girl was Greek Orthodox, and one girl was black. Both relationships ended real quickly when I walked them home from school, and their fathers found out that I was an Italian Catholic. This taught me that although I was secure in who I was, I can't necessarily be secure in other people because they are suspect to their own biases and prejudices. Over time, I was able to understand that the situation was not personal or malicious. I chose to interpret this situation as two fathers who were trying to make the best decisions for their daughter based on their own interpretations of the world. I was also turned down for a therapist position because the female clinical director said she was not sure that my type of masculinity would fit in with her program. Again, I was secure in my masculinity, but she definitely was not. You can never be secure enough to expect that sexism and ignorance does not exist in the world. Everyone has their issues, and although in this case I wasn't the one with the weakness, I was the one who was hurt by it, and probably many clients as well. I have many examples, but I will mention only one more because I realize that many people, including some of my clients and friends, are affected by this, especially in the new online dating world. In addition, many times people have to cope with society standards that have nothing to do with racism or sexism. Sometimes it just comes down to preferences. There has been a preponderance of evidence that indicates women prefer men who are at least 6 feet tall. If we consider that only 14% of men are that height, then we can surmise that about 86% of men may feel insecure. Even more interesting is that most women identify their ideal dream man to be 8 inches taller than them. So on a personal note, I'm about 5 foot 6 inches tall on a really good day, which made me taller than my father and mother, but short in the real world. Now here's where self-confidence and interpretation comes into play. If I were the type of person to think negatively, I could focus on that at my height, the only girl who would consider me to be a physically ideal man for her is someone who is 4 foot 10 inches tall. Meaning that the evidence suggests that I may have never, ever been with anyone who has ever considered me to be physically ideal. And that includes me having a house full of bodybuilding trophies, having been a sponsored athlete, and having been in Playgirl a couple of times. But I don't think negatively. I actually think this is kind of funny. I think people have their own preferences and types, and there's nothing wrong with that. I also have my own preferences. Self-confidence includes not caring about other people's opinions or letting the ignorance of others affect your self-image. Empirical evidence suggests that insecurities are at least partly responsible for the success of many people. Insecurity and the fear of failure are highly motivating forces, perhaps the highest motivating forces. In colloquial terms, these are the people who have an axe to grind, a chip on their shoulder, or a score to settle. These people tend to be perfectionists and are extremely motivated to prove that they are worthy. It's my personal and professional opinion that it's beneficial to accept our insecurities and attempt to find out their root cause. Then it will be easier to take the necessary steps to improve. When I was a child, I grew up in a situation where I was insecure about my physical abilities, my appearance, my intelligence, my financial capabilities, and more. All of these insecurities had a direct link to inspiring me to improve. If I was being honest, I would say that right now, I am just as insecure as I ever was. The part that has improved is my self-confidence. And yes, insecurity and self-confidence can share the same space. I have the self-confidence to admit that I have weaknesses and to know that sometimes my best still isn't good enough. I have the self-confidence to realize that my opinion is what matters. And I also have the self-confidence to know that I can improve at almost anything if I give it enough time and attention. And at this point in my life, I have a track record to prove it. I was always insecure about public speaking, and I couldn't avoid it in graduate school unless I quit. But there was no way I was going to do that. Instead, I gathered as much book knowledge as possible. I watched a fair amount of TED Talks and Obama speeches. I always dressed professionally for school, and I practiced my presentations. I never felt fully secure because I knew that there was always room for improvement. But I definitely did get much better. I was also insecure in graduate school because I hadn't been in college for a long time, and about 85% of therapists are female. And I didn't think anyone could relate to me, being the only bodybuilder in the class. As stated before, most aspiring therapists are female, and many have had serious trauma in their life, thus leading them to the mental health profession. The last thing they needed was to have a male bodybuilder sitting next to any of them. Although I have never been overly motivated by external validation, in school you have to be because you are depending on the teacher's grade and you could be dropped from the program at any time. Thus, I was always prepared with two presentations. One presentation was the way I wanted to do it based on my knowledge and experience. The other presentation was my backup plan in the event that my original critical analysis and view challenged, angered, or disturbed the teacher or students too much, which may have affected my grade. There was definitely a few times where I switched to a more basic vanilla point of view from an assigned book because I didn't want to offend any of the teachers in front of the students, especially because I was dependent on the teacher for my grade. Being one of the very few masculine males in a profession that has turned extremely feminine gave me the feeling of being an underdog. And like most underdogs, I was extremely insecure in my position, which made me work even harder. I did everything that was in my control to get perfect grades and to tilt the playing field in my favor. My insecurities in trying to enter a new profession led me to graduate with honors. I don't think this is unusual at all. I can say with great accuracy that almost every successful person I know has had a dark, difficult past that has filled them with insecurities that they are still attempting to overcome. Almost every great bodybuilder I have known was bullied as a child or was considered to be too skinny or too overweight. Every successful business owner I have known is still channeling their insecurities through their toys and bank accounts. Almost every attractive woman I have met is overcoming some level of insecurity. Life itself is not secure. The only way a person can feel secure while driving a 3,000-pound piece of glass and metal down the road at 50 miles an hour with other people who are easily distracted and prone to taking mind-altering substances is to suspend reality. Any conscious human being who understands that they are losing their youth and are getting one day closer to dying every day cannot be secure. Living in a capitalist country will ensure that you are rarely emotionally secure. You will always live in a competitive environment, and the marketplace will tell you exactly how much you are worth in terms of dollars and cents. Insecurity is an existential reality. There are people who are exceptional at splitting off from their insecurities and masking them from themselves and others. Many people such as this present with symptoms such as arrogance, conceitedness, anger, maliciousness, and being sadistic. Unfortunately, these types of people tend to be pathological and are usually known as psychopaths, sociopaths, and have narcissistic personality disorder. It's safe to say that there are two types of people in the world: those with insecurities and those who are not ready to be honest about their insecurities. Nature does not allow finite beings to be secure. Being insecure in an unpredictable, sometimes dangerous world is a superpower. Matters get increasingly worse in a capitalistic, superficial society that praises youth. Most people's jobs are not secure. The economy is not secure. People are not secure. And everyone is getting older in a world that is looking to replace you. You can be secure in knowing that living in an insecure world with insecure people does increase an individual's insecurity. Those who don't cope with insecurity in a skillful way are prone to jealousy, anger, fear, guilt, shame, and low self-esteem. Insecurity is a natural, necessary element in life that needs to be managed in a beneficial way. Those who do acknowledge and leverage their insecurities in a beneficial way can edge closer to their full potential and have the compassion and insight to assist others. This is where humility comes into play. Humility is the ability to recognize one's shortcomings while still maintaining self-confidence. Insecurity is the lack of confidence in abilities as well as the lack of confidence to improve. A humble person's self-judgment is informed by an objective assessment of one's potentials and limitations. An insecure person's thoughts, feelings, and actions are rooted in fear and shame of who they are. Humble people are more able to easily cultivate meaningful relationships, while insecure people have a tendency to create drama and conflict in their relationships. Humble people have the ability to take half of the credit and all of the blame, while insecure people blame others for their failures and claim undeserved credit. Humble trainers and marriage and family therapists consider themselves to be facilitators who help people to help themselves, while insecure helpers claim full credit. An insecure president, well, I think I'll just stop there and you get the point. In conclusion, having individual insecurities makes you human, but do not be an insecure person. Insecure people try to control people, places, and things outside of themselves. They lack the tools necessary to accept their reality and to change themselves in a beneficial fashion. Humble people use their insecurities to assist them in being a self-actualized person. So as I see it, the goal is to be humble. In this modern world of entitlement, bloated egos, overconfidence, selfies, narcissism, and attention seeking, this message has never been more important as it is right now. As British poet Alfred Lord Tennyson said, humbleness is the greatest virtue, the mother of them all. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I am Joseph Perroni from the Rise Above Project. Please subscribe and tell a friend. Thank you.